Greetings, my friends. Mkwann here. Gregorian timekeeping calendar date, February 7th, year 2024. And I'm here to talk about the second iteration of my natural astrology class. I talk about natural astrology throughout these videos, all the videos which I put out. And I began teaching natural astrology, or offered the first natural astrology course in the past December. And now I am prepared to apply the lessons which I learned in that first iteration to the second iteration of the natural astrology class. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. So, natural astrology, it's so funny because it's, on one hand, the simplest thing in the world, but on the other hand is incredibly complex in trying to explain what it is. So I'm going to try to do my best here. So what I wrote was, life's expectation of you is simple. Show up as you are. That is why you are called a human being, because all it is that you have to be. Note that life is in capital letters. Culture's expectation of you is a little bit more complex. That is why you are called a human resource. Natural astrology is the practice of integrating consciousness with life and disentangling from culture. So, natural astrology is a practice, and it is through that practice something occurs. This is very different than maybe how we think of astrology nowadays, which is mostly about an interpretation. Let me understand what's happening. Natural astrology is similar to cultural astrology, whether you practice a Western or Vedic, or use a sidereal or tropical, a 12 sign or 13 sign or real sign placement system. It's similar in the fact that there is an understanding of the significance to the mystery of life can be ascertained through the heavens. But natural astrology is much more interested in integrating your life with life itself. Like if you imagine yourself as a thread, each of us is a thread in the loom, or in the tapestry of life. We are, through natural astrology, is the practice of weaving that, weaving your thread into the tapestry of life. Now, the purpose of those first two lines about life's expectation and culture's expectation has to do with a recognition between general life, being alive, what I've referred to in the past as baseline reality, and then false reality, or matrix, or culture. And most astrology, well, the astrology which is practiced is really to integrate oneself into the paradigm, into the culture of whatever culture it is that, one finds himself living. And natural astrology is very, very specific in recognizing the difference between life and paradigm, or life and culture. And culture undoubtedly exists within life. But when one is in paradigm, in culture, which we all are, we're all born into it, and they are unaware of it, if they're unaware of the fact that I am in a self-referencing system which appears to be all it is, I mean, this could be one of the interpretations or one of the ways of looking at the Plato's cave allegory. You know, the people who are who are looking at the shadows on the wall and not wanting to step beyond it. You know, the shadows on the wall could be looking at life as paradigm. And then natural astrology could be thought of as a way out of it, but not everyone wants that. Natural astrology course is to teach the techniques and then the practice in order to move consciousness outside of the paradigm, outside of the shadows on the cave wall. This requires all sorts of courage, because we've been conditioned to desire the values of culture, which then further establishes culture's existence. I mean, it's the very nature of a parasite. A parasite makes its host crave what the parasite wants. When one's consciousness is formed, and if you were born in any seemingly traditional or mainstream sort of world, your consciousness was formed, mine was formed by paradigm or cultural values. Your values and your desires in life are what have been given to you. So, for example, what that could be is, you know, using our culture, like, you know, all of the trappings of our world, like, you know, high-paying job, fancy vacations, fancy houses, all of the things which our status-driven sort of world is about. And that world, if you receive those payoffs, you are undoubtedly a part of the system. So you're holding the system in place, and you're advancing the system into where the system is unfolding. So natural astrology isn't necessarily so simple or black and white as saying like, oh, I'm rejecting all of paradigm. No, not at all. What it is a recognition that one wants to integrate their consciousness outside of the paradigm filter, and then to live life in a way that makes sense. You know, the idea of being in this world and not of it makes sense in the understanding of natural astrology. And natural astrology is based upon an understanding that, one, that this is a consciousness-driven reality, meaning that our literal experiences there is a large correlation and impact between the stories we hold in our mind, our consciousness, and what we see in the outer world. And what makes things even more confusing is that the majority of the stories in our mind are hidden to us. We hold them so close, we don't even realize them to be stories. And so natural astrology is the practice of being able to look at the heavens in such a way that you are able to take away the cultural trappings of astrology, and those are best understood through contradictions and subjective interpretations, and really being able to lean into the knowable, objectable truth in which one can witness in the heavens. So in certain ways, it's closer to astronomy in that way. Remember, astrology and astronomy once were the same art form. And then in natural astrology, there is a faith in life and a non-dualistic approach, meaning that there is a recognition that the outer world and the inner world are immensely connected, so that by looking at the movement of the heavens, and a recognition that there's an impact to one's inner world, and then without the need to define it or limit it, but just to become integrated with it in knowing consciousness, that one's life becomes integrated with those movements. That's what that first sentence means, or I guess the last sentence. It's the practice of integrating consciousness with life as opposed to culture. Because when we look at astrology, or even if we don't look at astrology, if we follow the times and the movements of culture, we are linking in our inner world with culture and that paradigm, and that is where we live our lives. And so different things happen once one is integrated with life outside of culture's definition of it. A lot of the synchromistic storytelling, which I do, are demonstrations of what happens when one begins to move into life, a relationship with life directly. And so I'm not necessarily saying that this is the path for everyone to live, but as our culture begins to change immensely, as the rules of the game are changing, having a grounded relationship with the mystery of life, aka natural astrology, becomes a very, very significant compass or tool in one's journey. Wow, that's 10 minutes talking. So let's go and move in a little bit. So I've taught this class once before. I did 5 classes. I had a general idea of what I wanted to do, but I was just kind of figuring it out, seeing what worked and what didn't work. And so now I'm approaching it again, and from those experiences, I'm realizing that I want to teach this in two different levels, level 1 and level 2. Level 1 is the basics, and level 2 is the practice. The basics is understanding, is an understanding of being able to look at the heavens in a way that you are no longer filtered by the way culture has inspired you to look at the heavens, whether astronomically and or astrologically. And then level 2 is then how do you put this into practice? So what I'm going to be offering right now is just class number level 1. I don't have dates for level 2 yet, but in order for level 2 to occur, I think people need to go through level 1. If you were one of the 10 people who went through the first iteration of the natural astrology class, this is basically going to be, there's not going to be much different than what we discussed before. So level 1, the basics, this is what we'll be learning. The differences between false time and real time, false timelines and real timelines, reality and paradigm, and why it matters. So that's more of like a general, that's more philosophical. Its approach, but it's very grounded, using terms like real time and false time, like that, they have real meanings. And understanding what those meanings are, you're beginning to rewild one's consciousness. And so we begin with that, and then you'll be able to translate an astrological chart from an abstract concept to a literal map of material reality. So when you see one of these astrological charts, you'll be able to look at it and be like, okay, now I know what I'm looking at. I can take it outside and look at the heavens, and I can use it in lieu of a star finder map to understand what I'm looking at in the heavens. Like that's how literal an astrological chart is. Very, very few people, astrologers, they're able to look at an astrology chart and they're probably just going to see it as an abstract concept, as something to be interpreted. But we're going to be focusing not on the interpretation, but on how to translate that astrological chart into something literal and knowable. We're going to be covering the actual archetypical qualities of the planets. So the planets, the moving things in the sky, which is what makes astrology so significant, their meanings are grounded in mythology. And that mythology may or may not be based upon the archetypes of actually seeing what are in the heavens and seeing what those planets are demonstrating to us in knowable, observable form. But we'll be talking about that. We're going to be grounding like meaning into something knowable and real. We're moving away from abstract concepts into literal reality. We're going to be understanding, in astrology, they talk about houses. Well, houses are not an abstract concept. I mean, I guess they kind of are, but they're more literal. They are specifically literal interpretations of locations in the sky when looking at the sky. We're going to talk about why astrological signs don't matter, but planetary locations do. And then, most importantly, is you're going to learn how to take your natal chart, your natal astrological chart, and then to be able to correspond it to any other chart. That is a key thing for natural astrology, really any astrology, but to be able to have the point of reference of your own chart and then relating that to a specific time, date, place, or another human being. And then we'll be talking about the significance in learning, the significance of lunar cycles, learning the lunar cycles, understanding what the chrism is, eclipses, and why they matter. And so this is going to be done in 5 90-minute live Zoom classes. You'll also be given a 28-page natural astrology PDF. This class is limited to 10 participants. And I like to do this is because I like to know all the people. Like by the third class, like everyone kind of like we know each other. I try to make it interactive. Not everyone participates, but there's definitely a personal element in it. But all the classes are also recorded. So if you miss one of the classes, you can watch it again. And so this is $199 for the standard class, these 5 90-minute classes, and $299 is the enriched, which means that during the course of this 5-week process, there'll be one 60-minute personal session, and this is a discounted rate from what I would normally do for like a one-on-one session. So to give you an idea, some of the slides which we look at, we look at the sky from this way. I've used this a lot in videos, but being able to translate from the actual sky and understanding what's happening, being able to translate the actual sky into astrology charts, being able to really understand what we're experiencing standing on Earth, the direction of the heavenly bodies, what we are seeing, being able to look at the skyline and recognizing what we're seeing is really the same as an astrology chart, looking at lunar movements, looking at solar movements, understanding correspondences. Actually, this is in level 2, so I'll take that back. So that is this is the sort of things which we're going to be talking about in the class. And so class 1 dates and times, I've already selected the dates and times. They all correspond with the turning of the moon. Class begins on February 24th and concludes on this doesn't look right because there's not a March 3:35. I'm gonna have to update that. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. I think it might be 3:30, whatever Monday would be, which is close to it. And so if you are interested, this is only limited to 10 people. So today is the 7th. I'm gonna be really advertising this and putting this out there for the next 3 weeks until the 24th or until the 10 spots are filled up, whichever happens first. You could go to Linktree, you could go to, or send me an email with questions or PayPal directly for that. And then just as a little bit of a teaser for what level 2 is, level 2 is then applying all of this information into how and why to use the starboard, how and why to use lunar charts, how and why to use tropical and sidereal charts. And this is going to be a shorter class. And so that's not going to be available until, I've done the level 1 class maybe 2 or 3 times. So thanks for listening, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, and I hope to see and meet many of you in the classroom. Take good care.